right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Big Sky, Big Takes. We don't have our fun intro music today because, as you could tell, usual host Colby Peterson is not here. Patty, who was on sick leave slash I'm an idiot and I forgot what day the show was last week. I'm now stepping in for Colby, so we're a little bit misconstrued here. We had some link issues, login issues. We're here. We're late, but we're here. Parlay, I'll throw it to you first. What do you got going on here?
I offered to sing a song, but I got voted down for the intro music. Well, I'm just out here in Montana, relaxing, done with my busy season, going to all the playoff games. Hopefully, you probably hope differently, but you know, hopefully we got two more in Bozeman, and it's gonna be a good, interesting weekend. Last weekend was all chalk. Not many surprises except in the first half, I guess, with North Dakota State looking were they down 17-3. Then they almost covered the big spread. They won by 20, and it was 21.5 to 23.5, depending on when and where you picked it up. Speaking of spreads, I'll get into that in the rant because there was an awful cover depending on which side you were on. But yeah, probably the most interesting one was Incarnate Word. How low scoring that game was. That's you want your offense looking a little better than that before you head to Brookings. And so we've got two rematches coming up that were blowouts in the regular season. One I think will be another blowout. And the other one I think is going to be a totally different ball game, and that's going to be our matchup. I mean, Friday night, Jack Lane's back. You guys got some other guys back and healthy. I don't know. I think it's going to be a different ball game than what we saw in October.
Definitely possible. A lot more guys fully healthy than that first Montana State Idaho matchup where like a lot of guys played, but like Keyshawn James Newby, Dalasov Lava were both on pitch counts injured. You didn't have your starting quarterback. A lot of things are different this second matchup. Location's the same, the opponent's the same. So we'll see how that game goes. But I'll throw it right back to you, Parlay. Parlay preaches. Let's hear the rant for this week.
So, man, I mean, I kind of kicking myself because I didn't do a Parlay's picks. I was flying. I took the early flight from Chicago straight to Bozeman. Well, not straight to Bozeman. I had to go through Denver, Southwest. Both planes were 20% full, maybe. It was kind of surprising. On time, actually early. So that was great, but just didn't really have the time between, unless I did it on the plane itself, which I've done in the past. But the roadie Mercer under, I was all over that one. That was no sweat. I was all over Montana State covering against UT Martin. For about 5 minutes, I was nervous about UT Martin's run defense, but then I just kind of looked at who they'd played, and I wasn't nervous any longer. And obviously, from Saturday's results, there was no need to be. The Idaho one I missed because I guessed last week. We'll get into the guest lines later, but I guessed last week that Idaho would be favored by 21.5. They were favored by like anywhere from 10.5 to 12.5, and they won by 20. So, and that game was not that close. It wasn't a 20-point game. So I missed out on that one. And the longer I thought about it, and I can't bet it in Illinois because of the college rules there, but Davis should have been a much bigger favorite than they were. That thing dipped down to 6.5. That was everyone's upset special pick. They're kind of reaching for an upset special last week, but they rolled. That might have been the least competitive game of the weekend, besides the Montana State UT Martin. And UT Martin, they had a little shot where they had a deep pass for a touchdown, which makes me a little nervous heading into the game with Idaho. And then they were getting the ball back in the second half. So UT Martin had like a brief window where they could have made it a little bit close. Obviously, I don't think any Bobcat fans were too nervous, but that Davis game was just Illinois State had no chance from first quarter on. So that's setting up now where we don't have to reach, maybe I'm being overly cautious here, but I kind of am confident. Well, overly cautious, but also confident. I don't know how I can put those two together. I don't know how to feel about the Montana State Idaho game. We'll talk more about that in a second. But I legit think that, and other, FCS people that know a hell of a lot more about the sport and the division than I do, are saying Davis and South Dakota is going to be a hell of a matchup. The way Davis can match up with them with their offense, their defense is no joke. South Dakota, sneaky, um, like top offense in the division as far as like the PFF and some of the metrics go. And I saw them in person, and their Bauman, their quarterback, and that running back, he's like a poor man's Scadaboo a little bit, just a never ending motor, just a tough SOB. Like, I wouldn't want to face him. Whether I'd get killed if I was playing, but my team, Montana State, I'm not looking for him to play in South Dakota. I'd rather play Davis. I'm kind of rooting for Davis. I kind of know where we stand with them. South Dakota seems like kind of a tougher, more hard-nosed team, and they've played a lot of great teams close, and they're not afraid of the South Dakota States and the North Dakota States. I don't think they'd be too worried about coming into Bozeman. So that's the game I'm most looking forward to watching. Unfortunately, they keep moving the times around. It was at 4, now it's at 2. I don't even know when it's starting on Saturday. I think I'm flying to Sydney to see my brother's family, so I don't know if I'll even watch the first half. And I didn't even get to the main part of the rant, which was, holy hell. My third bet of the weekend was South Dakota State and the under. I just figured that Montana didn't have much fight left in them. And then when they started out yacht, I think Fife is better, although he's happy feet in the pocket when I finally watched the full game of his. And sure enough, they were getting blown out, and they snuck away with a backdoor cover. I mean, they had 3rd and long at midfield with 40 seconds left in the game, and somehow still pulled it off to get a touchdown, cover the spread, hit the over. I didn't have much money on it, but it would have been a nice little payout for me because of the parlay. And it was one of those correlated parlays. I just felt like South Dakota State was going to cover and keep the score low, which they pretty much did all game long. Montana, it looked like they couldn't even get close to scoring. And then they had the subs in. Montana got real aggressive with less than a minute left. I mean, I guess it looks better to lose by 17 than by 25. But really, what was that about? I think Bobby knew I had a bet on the game. It's all I can think of. And I'm just kidding. Obviously, he wants to compete. They want to get the kids pumped up, and Ayat needs some confidence heading into next year. But it was on SVP's Bad Beats. Was that last night? So everyone's texting me about it. Hey, did you bet on Montana? It's like, no, I didn't. Yeah, I got the bad end of that one. So that's about it. A rambling, just like what I'm known for. I don't even know what the parlay preaches was about. I just know I rambled for a bit, and now I'm done.
Fair enough. I'm definitely a rambler as well on my podcast, so I definitely understand that. Now, we're going to roll and guess the lines. We're just picking the 4 quarterfinal games. One thing I got a mini Patty preaches here. Why is the one game that I feel like the game that people are expecting to be the most competitive is the Davis South Dakota game? Isn't that the only game not on the linear networks? It's the only game that's on ESPN Plus, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, it's the only one. They buried that game. I mean, they probably have the 2 smallest
It's
fan
true.
bases by a long shot,
True.
but it is the game that the hardcore fans are probably most looking forward to. It's the one where we don't know. I mean, again, Idaho fans are confident, I know, going into this game, but it's the one where we truly, I think, is closest to a coin flip. It's the only one that's less than a touchdown on the spread. I was lucky to fire off my picks to my brother. I have them in writing before FanDuel posted them, I think Sunday morning or even Saturday night. Like, it was early. So they've been out there for almost a week now. and that's the only one less. Hell, it's the only spread. Not to spoil anything, it's the only spread under in single digits. So, um, not it's expected to go chalk again, but that's the game that I want to watch. And like I said, it's not on a linear network. I thought it was going to be at 2 o'clock at first Mountain Time. Now it's at 1, so I'm going to miss at least the first half. It's kind of a bummer. It's quite frankly, it's a bummer because the winner of our game plays the winner of that game, and I'd like to watch it. I don't know why it can't be on right after the North Dakota State game. Why does it have to be on at the same time as some other games? And whether ESPN Plus, fine, I don't care. It's the same thing to me on my TV. But yeah, the schedule I don't love, and I hate that they kind of buried what is going to be the most competitive game and a really, really intriguing matchup between. What I think it'll do for us is show us how close or far Big Sky and the Valley are, because
Yep.
South Dakota is right there with the XDSUs. They're right there. I mean, they should have beat South Dakota State in Brookings, and they beat NDSU at home. So if Davis can hang with them, I think Bobcat fans are going to feel, well, whoever wins Friday night is going to feel a lot better if Davis can hang with them. If South Dakota dominates them and their defense shuts down Davis, it's going to be like, oh, shit, here we go again. Another South Dakota champion. But we'll see what happens. And like I said, I hope I get to watch at least the second half. And last week, Colby's got a family event. He is not sitting out because I beat him 6-3. I was pretty dead on. I got a couple guesses right on, and I was just a couple points off. The only one I was way off on was the Idaho game. And again, every week I'm saying this. When I guess a line more than 5 points off what Vegas puts it, I'm usually right. And it turns out to be a good bet. And once again, that was true with his Idaho game. They should have been favored by 17 and a half or more. It opened, I think it opened even
It was like 10 and a half.
10 and a half. Like, I don't understand that. Lehigh, why?
Who knows?
They're not good. They're not good. And anyway, moving on. Let's see. So Saturday, we'll save our game for last, even
Okay.
though it's first. Saturday, the early game, I think it's at 11 local, 10 a.m. Mountain, is South Dakota State hosting Incarnate Word in a rematch. And what was your guess as I'm scrolling down to find what I sent?
Right. This one was kind of hard to figure out what I was thinking because these teams did play earlier in the year, and it was like one of those games where Incarnate Word they held their own for a decent part of that game, but at the end of the day, South Dakota State just kind of did their thing and won that one in the way that they wanted to win it. Coming into this game, I feel like a lot of people are just expecting this to be a total blowout, and I'm not sure. I I think South Dakota State's going to dominate this game. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much the fact that it's a rematch is going to affect the spread. I wrote South Dakota State minus 16 and a half. Feels, I don't know. I don't really know how to feel about it. This bracket's kind of weird. The two XTSU games, like, I'm not totally sure where I want to put it just because I don't know how much stock the Vegas puts into these, Southland or Southern
No.
Conference teams, but I put South Dakota State minus 16 and a half. What'd you put?
So I'm going to tell you my guess, and then I'm going to tell you the real one. Although it's hard to know. Do we go off what it is now or what it opened at? I don't even know if I have. Actually, I do have access to what it opened at. So let's just go to that. So I guessed 18 and a half. That was my guess. And it opened at 18 and a half. So I was right on that one. I don't know if it's different now. We can kind of say
I'd have to assume it probably went up.
it is no.
One down.
17 and a half.
Hmm,
So it's moving towards your guess. So
interesting.
interesting. Some a tiny, I mean, the 18 and a half, 17 and a half, it's not a significant number. Because 17, if it crosses, I don't see it crossing the 17 barrier. There'd be way too much Jack's money coming in. So it's probably going to settle in here. Sometimes you see these lines jump on game day as the real money comes in. All right. So I guess I take that one. Although technically right now we're tied. All right. So next game is, to me, the best matchup of the week. And it's Davis at South Dakota. What did you guess on that one?
Yeah, this one is it's kind of a tough one to do again. Like some of these playoff spreads are tough to predict, but South Dakota is going to be favored, obviously, higher seed home team. But I thought this one's going to be as close to a coin flip as you can. The two numbers I kept flipping between. I couldn't decide between were -4.5, -2.5, and I leaned to the -2.5. And the reason being, last week South Dakota they struggled a little bit with a Tarleton team that was not a top 8 seed. And I mean, that game was in doubt well into the fourth quarter. I mean, I think Tarleton had a lead in the fourth quarter in that game versus Davis. They just dominated. That was one of the most complete performances Davis has had all year versus a team that's not Northern Colorado. So I think that just weighs a few points in the eyes of Vegas. Maybe that's just me being an idiot. So I went South Dakota -2.5, but I could definitely see that being a little bigger, a little small. I don't know. Hard to pick this one, but I'll throw it to you. What did you put?
I went with 6.5. I just didn't think they could give him a touchdown. South Dakota's played, although they've played the two of the top three teams very closely, they've played couple other games closer than they should have. And so I settled on 6.5. It opened at 5.5. It's now 6.5. So, you might be leaning towards betting Davis if you can get, since it's 4 points higher than what you said. So, that's one of those though. Man, I don't know. I might stay away and just hopefully enjoy the game. Um, I'm gonna see what some of these are on Sports Bet Montana real quick, but so South Dakota State, damn juice, just so technically it's 18.5 on Sports Bet Montana, but if you want -110, the typical juice, it's 20.5 South Dakota State. And if
Wow.
you want -110 on the other side, it's basically +17. It's such a screwy, stupid book. All right, and then the South Dakota Davis game on Sports Bet Montana for all our Montana fans here that I don't have access to the old FanDuels of the world. What the hell? 5.5 is -130 though.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, this is the significance of -130 versus -110. If you want $100 in profit, you got to risk $130 at Sportsbet Montana. Okay, your typical book, if you want $100 worth of profit, you risk $110. 100, that's $20 more. That's a significant amount more you got to risk for the same amount of profit. It's just it at -110 you got to hit like 54. Pros hit like 54%. -130 you got to hit over 55%, which is damn hard to do even in FCS. So it's stay away from sports but Montana as long as they have those damn juices so high. All right, let's move on. Mercer at North Dakota State. Mercer's defense has been good, but is their offense enough? I definitely, if I were to guess how this game would go, it'd be a lot like the last one North Dakota State played, except I don't think they get down by 14, but I think it's going to be close in the first half. And then North Dakota State will just wear them out, just kind of old school Bison football, except they're not as good on defense as they have been in the past, but they're going to just come out and score a bunch in the second half and put Mercer away. Is my prediction. It'll look close. We're going to feel like, oh, could we see some SoCon blood in the semifinal? But it ain't going to end close. And I don't think the books or us think so either. What's your guess?
Right. I think this is the biggest spread of the weekend. I put minus 19 and a half, and this is, I feel like that's maybe just a tad high. The only reason being Mercer's defense has been pretty dang good, aside from, like 5 minutes versus Sanford. But I don't know. I think 19 and a half is about where I would put it. I think NDSU is going to beat him pretty good. But one thing that's kind of interesting with this is like I think the over under spread is like, or the over under total is like 55 and a half or something around there, which just that is so low. Just a comment. I'll throw it to you, Parlay. What'd you put?
So I went low, and I think I was just a little higher on Mercer and lower on North Dakota State after some of their recent games. And I kind of forgot that. I didn't forget. I just omitted the fact that North Dakota State, like Montana, like other public teams, gets a little bump. Okay, no one knows Mercer. So even though I think a truer line is 14 and a half, I think they get a 3 to 5 point bump with the public, depending where the spread is at. And so it opened at 17 and a half, and it's still there. There's a little more juice. It's minus 115 if you want to jump on the side of the Bison, but it's 17 and a half and holding there. The over under 54 and a half, yeah, that is low for a North Dakota State game. But if they know that Mercer isn't good on offense, they might go for their more old school clock control approach. They might dial back the passing game a little bit. It just depends. Those over unders in college, they're just things can change like that. Okay, so if Mercer has trouble moving the ball and North Dakota State holds field position early and their run game is doing well, they might just control that clock and grind that thing down. Okay, and then 55 and a half will seem way too high, So, whereas on the other hand, if Mercer gets a couple big plays, North Dakota State has to fight from behind or just to keep up like they did last weekend, that 55 will be done in the third quarter. We'll be thinking, what in the hell was I doing betting under? So, I'm not going to bet that total. I think if I did, I might lean under, honestly, but I do not want to bet an under against Cam Miller and the Bison this year. Even though Mercer, I think they'll be lucky. That's something I might check. Here, let's double check the Sportsbet Montana, and then they're pretty good at having team individual. That's one thing. You can find other stuff you can't find on national books. So you got to pay for it. But sometimes there's values. All right, so let's see. Sportsbet Montana. Shitty juice again. They're looking at a 20 and a half. Sportsbet Montana, 20 and a half. Okay. And then Mercer total. Yep. That's what I thought. It's 16 and a half with massive juice. If you go under, you got to lay minus 130. If you go over 16 and a half, you got to lay minus 139. So that's just that. Anyway, but yeah, the odds makers in Montana don't think Mercer's going to score more than 17 points. Okay.
Yep.
So, and I kind of don't see them scoring. Definitely don't see them scoring more than 20. Okay. All right. The main event
For us.
Friday night under the lights. Rematch from October, from a game where not only was it not close, but it wasn't even competitive. Like Idaho had trouble even getting over the 50-yard line. And obviously that isn't going to happen. So Montana State's discipline, if this wasn't a well-coached, disciplined team, this would be one of those, rematches that they'd be caught off guard. But I don't see Vegan's team being caught off guard. But that doesn't mean that Idaho can't come up with some big plays. And they can look at, say, that last score of the half by UT Martin. They can look at what New Mexico did to us in week 0. But you look at the rest of the season, Montana State just hasn't been tested through the air. Not at all. So the Grizz didn't. I don't know if that's just the stubbornness of the OC and Bobby, or if it was the wind. Like, that wind got pretty nasty in that game. But the rest, no one else has been able to do anything against us passing wise, and that's the weakness I think we have. I guessed minus 13 and a half, because even though it was such a blowout, Idaho's too good of a team in a rematch, X too good of a coach to bump that above 14, in my opinion.
Right. So this matchup for me is kind of weird because the first matchup was so much different. Like, you don't have your starting quarterback. Idaho was coming off like 5 straight eight road games. It felt like everyone they played was ranked. Like, it felt like they're beat up. Now this Idaho team feels a lot more healthy, a little bit more momentum. I said Montana State minus 12 and a half, but now that I'm thinking about it, I wish I would have bumped that up a couple points. Reason being, Idaho just hasn't really gotten much love from Vegas. Like, like we mentioned earlier in the show, like they got minus 10 versus Lehigh. But I don't know. I think 12 and a half is right around where it will be and where it should be, but maybe it's actually a couple points higher than 12 and a half now that I'm just thinking about the Idaho situation. But yeah, like you said, that this game's, I mean, if I'm the Idaho fan in me, I went to school at Idaho for 2 years. The Idaho fan in me is not feeling great about this matchup. Feeling better about it than earlier this year, but like, I think Montana State, you watch the two teams, it looks to me like two different levels. But I don't know. We'll kind of have to see. Do you have any other final thoughts on this game? I'm just curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, I think the depth of Montana State and the home atmosphere on a Friday night is going to be the difference maker. I think it's going to look close, at least in the first 2.5 quarters. Okay. I think it's going to be a similar vibe to Mercer, North Dakota State, except you guys have livelier playmakers, so you're more dangerous. Okay. But we don't have the apathy a little bit that North Dakota State has, so to speak, with the fandom. If you're looking at the stadium numbers, they're not getting the attendance that they used to. Okay. Montana State's going to have a sellout or close to it. Friday night could be weird, but it's going to be loud. All right. It's going to be outdoors, obviously. Idaho plays indoors. Okay. Um, I don't know how big of an issue that will be, but I think with the depth, like if you guys stay healthy, um, but no one's healthy this time of year. That's the thing. Like when you played Oregon, like who knows what Oregon's game plan was that early in the year, but that was the first game for you or for Idaho. And, you know, that's a little different than the third week of the playoffs. Okay. Well, the second game in the playoffs for Idaho, what is this? Is this their 14th game? I think so.
Yeah,
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 game 14 versus game 1, huge difference. So that's where the depth. That's been the difference between the XDSUs and the rest of us. Is like Montana State, everyone saw it last September. Really should have beat South Dakota State in Brookings. Okay? Then the rest of the year, no one came close. No one came close. Because as everyone else is getting ground down and their starters are coming out or they're 50%, South Dakota State's next man up. North Dakota State, next man up. Linemen get hurt. And that's kind of where the Bobcats are now. It's offensive linemen. I mean, we lost everyone last year. Okay. Weir is a stud. Uh, Guys, we were getting injuries late in the year last year, and we just plugged someone else in, and we were fine. Now we can't say the same thing about. I don't want to even mention the names of the players I couldn't bear to see come out, but running back room, we're deep. Okay, uh, we had Humphrey back after Cat Grizz. We didn't have him. or he was briefly played, and man, he did well against UT Martin. I don't think we're going to have Davis back yet. So, but still, we've got two great running backs. Idaho, if they get a guy banged up on the defensive line, or if Montana State grinds out first downs and controls the ball, Idaho's going to suffer in the second half. I think that's the difference maker, is the depth. That's what I think it is. Idaho's young, they're talented, but they don't have the same depth, especially on the lines, that Montana State does. And you tie that in with a home field advantage on a Friday night, and man, I think you're going to see things start to separate in the third and fourth quarter. And that's where Idaho's going to need to play perfect and win the turnover battle, and hope possibly too for some Montana State special teams mishaps. And here's the deal. We've seen this stuff happen. That's why it's hard to be too confident as a Montana State fan, because we've seen what can happen. UC Davis game. We were up 30-8, and they had a chance to tie it with a 2-point conversion at the end. So, Idaho has the dudes to get it done and to hang with us, but I just don't know if they have the depth
Right.
on game 14 on a Friday night on the road.
I think Idaho they'd have to thrive on big plays, which they can with Jack Lane. The big playability is there, but it's just I don't know, man. I'm not feeling too great as someone that's going to be rooting for Idaho on Friday. I think it'll be closer than the first matchup for sure. Idaho's offense is totally different with Jack Lane, but like you said, man, it's just the offensive line play. It's just different, and I'm not sure Idaho's going to be able to run the ball very effectively against Montana State, and that's where you start having issues if you're Idaho, because just the line's not a strength of the team, and that's going to lead to tough results for the Vandals.
Yeah.
Do you
And
have any final thoughts before we kind of wrap it up here, as we're over our 30-minute mark?
Yeah, we can throw in a question or two, but yeah, Eck's going to throw the playbook in the kitchen sink and everything else, and Eck comes up with some dandies. So if those come through, I mean, it could be a coin flip into the fourth quarter. And when a game's close in the fourth quarter, college level, anything can happen, right? But if those big plays don't come through, we could see the Bobcats start to run away with it. And I bet, full disclosure, I bet the Bobcats minus 11.5. I saw it at 10.5, jumped in it. Those numbers don't normally matter, but both teams are capable of missing extra points, so they might in this.
Yep.
The 10.5 to 13.5 could actually make a difference, even though none of those are key numbers. So, I'm looking forward to it. I'll be there. I'll be in the end zone seats. I hear Hot Take Nate's making the trip from California, so should be a good time. Should be a hell of a Friday night game. All eyes on us. There's no other football on Friday. None.
Yep.
Okay. We won't have to wait for some crappy late night game. Well, I shouldn't. There's probably some basketball game that'll go late that'll make us turn to ESPN Plus. I don't care. I'll be there. All right. Anything we want to address with the fans here before we, like I said, I wanted to keep a hard 30 minutes tonight for some reason. Of course, I went over.
Of course. So we'll probably let's just we'll wrap it up here, because I gotta get moving as well.
All right.
Here's your chance to do the song if you want to, as we end out.
No, I'm not even gonna try. I wish I had something tuned up. I wish I could freestyle, but I can't. But I can talk. So here we go. Blah blah blah. Go Bobcats.
Thanks everyone for tuning in.
We stay chalk. Not all the favorites cover, but it's going to be a chalk semifinal. That's my prediction.